Are you looking to cultivate better habits that can transform your life? In this video, we will be discussing 7 key principles rooted in Buddhist philosophy that can guide you in cultivating habits that foster personal growth and inner peace. Lesson 1. Start small. In the Buddhist tradition, simplicity and mindfulness are the first steps towards developing habits. The idea of impermanence, that everything is constantly changing, is among Buddhism's most profound teachings. Knowing this, we can see that gradual adjustments over time can result in big changes. The Buddha frequently stressed in his teachings the value of beginning with modest, doable measures. Likewise, we have to start small in order to develop better behaviors. Attempting to make significant changes all at once frequently leads to overwhelm and disorientation. However, by starting small and making progress over time, we lay the groundwork for sustained success and growth. Beginning tiny is a Buddhist practice that reflects the idea of gradual cultivation, which prioritizes sustained advancement over abrupt shifts. We can cultivate our positive habits by taking small steps at a time, just as a plant grows gradually from a seed into a tree. Let's say you wish to develop meditation as a habit. Instead of starting off with an hour a day of sitting, start with 5 minutes. This little, regular practice aids in the development of rhythm. As the habit gets more comfortable over time, you can inevitably lengthen the sessions. This idea can be used to any behavior you choose to form, such as exercising gratitude, mindfulness, or patience. Buddhist teachings frequently use the metaphor of a drop of water filling a bucket. Even though one drop might not seem like much, over time, those tiny, steady drops will gradually fill the entire bucket. This also applies to habits. Over time, little actions that are repeatedly done might result in significant changes. By beginning small, we keep ourselves from giving up. It keeps the objective within grasp, enabling us to experience a sense of success that spurs us on. Buddhism emphasizes that our intention and level of awareness are more important than the size of the deed. Little thoughtful deeds can have a big impact on our lives, increasing awareness and bringing about constructive change. The first crucial step in developing improved habits is to start small. It instills in us the value of perseverance, constancy, and awareness. By starting with little steps, we create the foundation for more significant change and enable our habits to develop and change in a way that is consistent with Buddhist teachings. Lesson 2. Make definite goals. In Buddhism, our behaviors and habits are greatly influenced by our intentions. The Buddha taught that the quality of our acts is determined by our intentions. Therefore, it's crucial to create intentional, well-defined goals when trying to develop improved behaviors. A well-defined objective gives our trip direction and purpose and serves as a beacon of light. Our efforts could become dispersed, and we can lose sight of the goal in the absence of clarity. We can maintain our attention and alignment with our genuine aims by setting clear goals. We must make sure that our goals align with our spiritual values when we set them in the context of developing habits. In Buddhism, this refers to coordinating our objectives with the Noble Eightfold Path's teachings on correct intention and proper conduct. This guarantees that the behaviors we choose benefit not just our own health, but also the health of others. If your objective is to become more empathetic, for example, consider what concrete steps you might take to develop this trait. You could resolve to commit one act of kindness every day or make it a goal to practice loving-kindness meditation, metta, for 10 minutes every morning. With the support of these specific, doable objectives, you can develop compassion on a daily basis and have a tangible route to follow. It's critical to have both aspirational and practical goals when creating them. Buddhism acknowledges the existence of the middle way, which is a path that stays away from extremes. In a similar vein, we should refrain from going overboard with our goal setting when trying to develop new habits. A specific objective needs to push us just enough to spur development without becoming too much. One of the most useful tools in Buddhist practice is visualization. When we can visualize the outcome clearly, we build a powerful mental picture that inspires us to keep going. Visualize yourself assimilating into the new habit you're attempting to develop. Buddhist teachings place a strong emphasis on the value of routine goal reflection. We need to exercise mindfulness of our goals in the same manner that we practice mindfulness of our breath or thoughts during meditation. We make sure our objectives are still pertinent and in line with where we are at any given time by reviewing them on a regular basis. Building healthy behaviors starts with well-defined goals. By doing this, we make sure that intention, mindfulness, and purpose drive our work. Having specific goals gives us direction and keeps us moving in the direction of personal development. Lesson 3. Simplify. Lessening suffering is one of the primary lessons of Buddhism. Even while pain is an unavoidable aspect of existence, the Buddha taught that it can be lessened. In a similar vein, we ought to make the process of forming better habits as simple and pleasurable as we can. We improve the path's smoothness and eliminate needless impediments to raise our chances of success. In Buddhism, we can conceptualize it as dismantling the mental and physical obstacles that impede our practice. Positive behaviors are easier to adopt, which lowers the chance of resistance, procrastination, or giving up. For instance, simplify the approach if your objective is to meditate each morning. Create a peaceful area in your house where you can meditate alone. Make sure your chair or cushion for meditation is prepared so you won't need to set it up every time. If you have trouble getting out of bed in time for meditation, maybe about going to bed a bit earlier or setting a quiet alarm. Buddhism acknowledges the significance of the environment. The Buddha frequently discussed finding the ideal circumstances to encourage spiritual practice. In a similar vein, we need to establish an atmosphere that facilitates our success when developing habits. Be in the company of positive people who will assist your development. Eliminate any temptations or distractions that could tempt you to break your desired behavior. Dividing the habit into smaller, easier-to-manage chores is another method to simplify the process. You don't have to be aware of every moment right away if your goal is to cultivate mindfulness as a habit throughout the day. Start by deciding on 1 or 2 daily activities, like eating or walking, where you can engage in mindfulness. You can facilitate the adoption and maintenance of the habit by concentrating on these little moments. In addition, Buddhism instructs us to approach our practice with a relaxed and carefree attitude. The Buddha frequently advised his followers not to push or strain themselves during their practice. Likewise, we want to approach the process of forming habits with a feeling of ease and adaptability. Need the habit seem too challenging or demanding, it can indicate that we need to modify our strategy. Finally, by combining habits with pre-existing routines, we can facilitate the development of new habits. This idea, called habit stacking, is consistent with the interdependence principle found in Buddhism. Our habits can be related to one another, just as everything in the cosmos is related to everything else. For instance, you can practice mindfulness during the time you spend drinking tea in the morning, if that's currently your habit. It is simpler to integrate a new habit into your everyday routine when it is stacked on top of an already existing one. Simplifying the process of forming healthier habits is a crucial step in the process. Through lowering barriers, fostering a positive atmosphere, and taking a lighthearted and easygoing approach to the process, we can improve our chances of success and forge a satisfying and sustainable route. Lesson 4. Monitor your development. The cultivation of attention is essential to spiritual growth in Buddhism. Being mindful entails paying close attention to the here and now and objectively assessing our feelings, ideas, and behaviors. By keeping track of our progress, we may also use this mindful awareness technique to develop better habits. Because it keeps us accountable and conscious of our efforts, tracking our progress is a crucial component of developing new habits. We may see and monitor the evolution of our habits, just as we do when we meditate and pay attention to our breath. We can observe where we are improving and where we might need to change our strategy when we are mindfully aware of our surroundings. Keeping track of advancements also promotes self-awareness. Buddhism holds that gaining self-awareness is essential to comprehending the mind and severing harmful habits. Monitoring our routines helps us become more conscious of our inclinations, both good and bad. Being aware of this allows us to act consciously instead of impulsively or out of habit. By keeping track of your progress, you can find trends that might not be immediately apparent. For example, you might discover that some periods of the day are better for engaging in a given habit, or you might discover that specific emotional states make it more difficult to maintain your behavior. You can improve the efficacy of the habit-building process by modifying your approach and gaining useful insights by monitoring these trends. It's critical to keep in mind that monitoring your development does not include self-criticism or judgment. Self-compassion practice is central to Buddhism. We need to be kind and empathetic as we monitor our habits. If we catch ourselves making a mistake or skipping a day, we should just acknowledge it without passing judgment and gently return to the routine. One of the most effective tools for creating better habits is tracking your progress. Through the use of attentive awareness, we maintain accountability, acquire knowledge, and foster motivation. Similar to how mindfulness is a fundamental component of Buddhist practice, observing our behaviors with compassion and awareness can result in long-lasting development and change. Lesson 5. Emphasize consistency rather than perfection. The desire of perfection is frequently viewed in Buddhism as a cause of sorrow. The Buddha preached that striving to control every part of life or clinging to ideals would only cause unhappiness and frustration. Buddhism, on the other hand, urges us to accept life's imperfections and concentrate on making constant, steady progress. Developing better behaviors is directly related to this idea. Perfectionism is a common trap to fall into when forming new habits. We could have inflated expectations of ourselves, thinking we have to adhere to the practice flawlessly every day. Nevertheless, when we eventually fall short, this way of thinking frequently results in disappointment and discouragement. Buddhism tells us that consistency in our efforts is more important than perfection. The secret to long-term success is consistency. Similar to how droplets gradually fill a bucket, tiny, persistent activities result in long-lasting transformation. The focus of Buddhist practice is on making consistent long-term effort, regardless of the practice, mindfulness, meditation, or moral behavior. The objective is to consistently engage, even in the face of imperfect results. For instance, if you're attempting to develop the daily meditation habit, there might be days when you're not in the mood to meditate, or when your mind is especially racing. It is sufficient to merely show up and sit in meditation for a short while, even if it isn't a great meditation session. The important thing is to constantly come up. The caliber of a single session is not important. Resilience is the result of putting consistency over excellence. Buddhists view difficulties and roadblocks as chances for personal development. It's critical to keep going and not give up when we experience obstacles or setbacks while forming new habits. Alternatively, we might see these obstacles as a necessary part of the journey and keep up our steady, constant work. We establish a sustainable route for growth when we let go of the drive for perfection and embrace steady, deliberate effort. By practicing consistency, we align ourselves with the teachings of Buddhism and develop inner serenity, patience, and resilience. Lesson 6. Have perseverance and patience. Creating new habits is a process that takes time. Buddhism uses the idea of impermanence to remind us that everything is always changing. It takes time for our habits to form and take hold, just as it does for a seed to grow into a tree. While it's natural to get impatient or irritated when we don't see results right away, Buddhism encourages us to persevere and have faith in the process. It took the Buddha himself a great deal of patience and perseverance on his spiritual path. He persevered in his quest for enlightenment despite significant obstacles, having done so for years. In the end, his perseverance brought about his awakening beneath the Bodhi tree. Similar to this, we need to practice patience and persistence when creating healthier habits, since we know that these attributes will pay off in the long run with persistent work and patience. Buddhism places a strong emphasis on the value of not being attached to results. We bring pain upon ourselves when we become connected to the outcomes of our labors. Rather, we ought to concentrate on the procedure itself, having faith that the outcomes will come about organically if we are patient and persistent. This idea is especially crucial for developing habits since it keeps us from getting too caught up in the now and instead keeps our attention on the here and now. Being gentle to ourselves when we experience failures is another aspect of patience. Self-compassion practice is essential to Buddhism. Since we are all fallible human beings, it is normal to make mistakes and run into difficulties occasionally. When we make mistakes, we should be compassionate toward ourselves and gently re-establish the habit rather than being judgmental or harsh with ourselves. Being persistent means putting in effort even when it's challenging. Persistence is sometimes referred to as effort in Buddhist practice. We can overcome indolence, distraction, or discouragement thanks to this trait. It's the willpower to stick with our routine even when we're not feeling it. In the same way that the Buddha persevered in his pursuit of enlightenment, so too may we persevere in creating better habits. Dividing your habit into smaller goals is a useful strategy to develop patience and tenacity. Consider the next action to take, rather than the final result. Remember that every step forward is a step toward progress, so celebrate each little accomplishment along the way. This method keeps you patient and motivated since you can see that you are improving, even if it's slowly. The ability to be persistent and patient is necessary for creating better habits. Buddhism teaches us to be present, have faith in the process, and develop self-compassion along the way. We may overcome obstacles and form habits that move us closer to serenity, happiness, and spiritual development if we have patience and perseverance. Lesson 7. Eliminate temptations. The idea that desire is the primary source of suffering is one of Buddhism's core teachings. When it comes to developing healthier habits, temptations can be understood as the result of imprudent urges that pull us from our objectives. The Buddha taught that we might remove the barriers preventing us from traveling the path of virtue and knowledge by comprehending the nature of desire and learning to let go of unhealthy attachments. Eliminating temptations is a practical step that keeps us on track when it comes to developing habits. Temptations are the deterrents or barriers that draw us from our goals. These distractions, which might include the desire to engage in unhealthy activities or skip a meditation session, have the potential to undermine our efforts if we don't approach them carefully. In Buddhism, resisting temptations requires engaging in mindfulness exercises. Being mindful enables us to recognize when cravings and temptations arise and to resist them before they have a chance to control us. We can choose not to act on these desires by being mindful and observing them without passing judgment. This exercise gives us more control over our behaviors and routines. Establishing an atmosphere that encourages your objectives is one method to get rid of temptations. In the same way that the Buddha urged his followers to look for conducive practice environments, we can establish conducive environments for habit formation. Eliminate or lessen the things that make you tempted. For instance, refrain from having unhealthy snacks on hand if you're attempting to form the habit of eating healthily. If you want to cut down on screen time, set up a specific area in your house where you store electronics when they're not in use. The Buddha stressed the value of exerting proper effort to subdue unhealthy cravings. Good work entails eschewing unwholesome traits and fostering wholesome ones. When we become aware of temptations, we can focus our efforts on acting more strategically. For example, you can decide to do something constructive or mindful in place of putting off a task if you're inclined to put it off. Over time, when we repeatedly choose wise decisions, we reduce the strength of temptation. Renunciation is a powerful habit that can help you overcome temptations. Buddhism views renunciation as the letting go of attachments that cause suffering, rather than depriving oneself of pleasure. We make room for more healthy traits to emerge when we let go of unwholesome aspirations. Renunciation can refer to giving up routines or behaviors that are no longer beneficial to us when it comes to developing new habits. It's crucial to practice mindfulness regarding the repercussions of caving into temptations. This is called insight meditation in Buddhist teachings. We get a better knowledge of how unhealthy behaviors result in pain when we consider the effects of our choices. Gaining this understanding increases our motivation to resist temptation and stick to our objectives. Removing temptations is a critical first step toward developing healthier behaviors. We can let rid of the wants and diversions that draw us off our path by practicing mindfulness, making the proper effort, and renunciation. In addition to strengthening our dedication to healthy behaviors, we can advance toward inner peace and spiritual development by fostering a supportive environment and developing awareness of the nature of our activities. Developing healthier habits via the practice of Buddhism is about developing inner peace, mindfulness, and compassion, not only about bettering oneself. The timeless wisdom of the Buddha's teachings is the foundation for the 7 phases mentioned in this guide. Starting small, setting clear goals, making it easy, tracking progress, focusing on consistency, being patient and persistent, and removing temptations. We must keep in mind to approach the process of developing new habits with kindness, mindfulness, and non-attachment as we set out on this journey. Every action we take offers us the chance to improve our practice and go nearer to the virtues of wisdom, compassion, and calmness that are the core teachings of Buddhism.